Hey everyone, welcome back to West Coast Mopars. Some of you might remember this little 62 Plymouth Valiant that I had bought. It had been sitting, I think, like 30 years. Engine was seized. Same story, neglected. I ended up putting it back on the road, and I sold it to a lady and her husband, and they're part of our West Coast Mopars car club. So the lady said she always wanted she had a Valiant in high school. I don't know if it was a 62. I think she said it was more like a 64 or 65. But anyway, she always wanted another Valiant, and she saw this one, and I sold it pretty cheap. I think I don't know, $1,500 or something like that. I can't remember. But she loved it. She was driving it around quite a bit. But unfortunately, and I don't know if you guys remember, the frame underneath this car is quite rusty. The floors are quite solid, the trunk was nice and solid, but the frame was not the prettiest. The car came from Ontario, and somebody had actually had body and paint done on the car long ago, but now the paint's all chalky and old. And whoever did the body work, I mean, they didn't do the best work, a lot of fiberglass involved, but it's still a neat little car. Anyways, the lady had filled the tank full, the gas tank, and then she drove down to the beach, go cruise around in her new car, and I think she'd been driving it about a week, 2 weeks. Anyways, unfortunately the frame was rusty at the back where the gas tank strap J-hooks to the frame. And she hit a set of train tracks that we got here that are just nasty. And I mean, everything I drive over those tracks, I slow right down, whether it's a new car or an old car. But I guess she hit them going pretty fast, somewhere around 70 miles an hour. And the gas tank, actually fell out of the car because it was full, so it was heavy. And it ripped the strap, the J-hook, right out of the frame. And she heard a loud bang, but she didn't stop. She actually drove, I don't know, 10 more miles, and apparently the gas tank was just hanging down, dragging on the ground. The rubber fuel line was the only thing holding the tank to the car, and it just kept pumping fuel, and she kept driving. So she is so lucky that the tank didn't explode, that nothing happened. So anyways, here we are. The car kind of sat all summer, and then they asked me if I could put tank back in. So she looked into getting a tank for it, but because it's a 62, it's got a really small tank. It's smaller than the 63 and up tanks, but it is an A-body, so it's a sort of an oddball thing. It was too far gone to fix, I guess. So they ended up buying a fuel cell, and they've asked me if I can put it in the trunk. So I've got it unboxed here. So here is the fuel cell that they've purchased. It's just from Amazon. It's a 17-gallon, 65-liter fuel cell. I purchased the AN fittings through Summit Racing. Sorry, one of them is the pickup tube goes to the bottom. One's a vent, and one's a return line. So we're just going to use the vent and the one with the pickup tube. The one with the return I'll just plug off. So I got to figure out a way to strap this in the trunk that still allows her to have usable trunk space. I sort of laid it there. I think that's probably the best bet. She can still reach in and fill the tank, but it still allows her to use the trunk. So that's one thing. The other thing is seat belts. They wanted some seat belts. Now it does have these old seat belts in it, but I'm pretty sure the buckles are so rusty that she couldn't adjust them. So I bought a set of seat belts for her off Summit Racing, and these are, I think they're called Retro Belt. I'll get them out of the box here in a sec, but I put them in my 57 Dodge, and I had a set in that 66 Chrysler. So they're quite nice. They look factory. They're actually very affordable, and they've got a warranty on them, and they're approved seat belts. So, but yeah, here's another look at the funky little 62 Valiant, and it'd be good to. She wants to bring it to our Mopar show that we do in Coombs each year, and you know, it'd be nice if she could actually enjoy the car. I feel bad because she only got to drive it for like, you know, maybe it was a month, I can't remember, but I did warn them. I did. I feel like I did my due diligence. I did warn them when I sold the car. I said, you know, it kind of is what it is. Drive it till it falls apart, or, you know, or put some serious time and money into it. You know, I don't think it's too far that it can't be saved, but it's definitely, you know, don't be hitting those train tracks at 70 miles an hour anymore. Hopefully no more issues after this. But, and there's the engine. It is a slant 6. I think it's the small one. I feel like it's a 170. But yeah, it's got to be, because it's got that little tiny bypass hose. So it's 170 slant 6, manual drums all around. Still got a single master cylinder. But yeah, neat little car. Okay, well here's what I came up with. I've got the fuel cell strap down. I used one of the original straps, a little crusty looking, but just bolted it through down there, and same with on the other side. Just got a cap on the return. This is the vent, and this is the fuel line. It goes down. So I ran that just down through the floor, put a grommet there, and then the vent line comes up, comes over, and I just put it on the original filler tube because that vent setup worked fine. So, and then it sort of keeps it kind of tidy in here. It's not the nicest. I don't love how the hose is there, but I feel like if she's aware, it's kind of there. She's still got some trunk space, and it seems to be venting fine because the tank hasn't sucked itself, you know, collapsed. Yeah, so I'm just going to let it run for a few minutes here. I don't think she's ran it since probably last summer, so I'm just going to let it idle, let it burn off some stuff. And it's a little smoky, but I think it's just probably because it's sat. I mean, it sat for 30 years, and then I got it on the road, and then I only probably drove it maybe a couple weeks, and then they bought it from me, so it's probably got some bunch of stuff to burn off. Alright, and it's up on the hoist here. So I pulled out the old seat belt, and it's pretty crusty. The whole car is crusty. I forgot how rusty this thing was. But, you know, there's patches on the frame, it's crusty. But it's, you know, it is, I think it's from Ontario, and stuff just isn't as pretty, I guess. Man, it's rough. Anyways, let's not look too closely. I don't even want to know what's under all this goop they put on here. Well, it's probably nothing, but it's rusty frame. There's the fuel line I ran through. The fuel line's new. That's nice. Nice new fuel line on there. Little 7 1/4. Tiny little exhaust. Anyways, back to this. So those retro belts, they come with good hardware, big washers. Apparently I only ordered one, like literally one side on the front. I didn't order a pair. I don't remember doing that, but it's been so long since I've ordered their seat belts for them. They've been sitting in my shop up here for, all since last summer probably. So anyways, here's the black. The one is in. Here's what I took out. These old, just these old crusty things, and I guess that they wouldn't latch very well. I kind of remember that they were pretty much done. So these are the retro belts. See, they look like your regular Chrysler belts. That's them there, retro belt. I like them, and there's lots of length on them, which is nice because, you know, doesn't matter what size of a person you are, you can fit. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I got to get the rear one in. What they had is, you can see that Just use my drill light there. There's sort of that eye bolt there goes through, and they just had them clipped on there. I'm just going to drill this probably somewhere near the transmission hump, not as far back as that one is, and run the other belt through, and that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. Okay, bolts through, and then they're pretty obvious, but when you put them in, you just put the bolt through with through the seat belt, and then they give you one big flat washer and a lock washer and a nut. So you put the big flat washer on the bottom of the floor pan, so that if there's anything happens, you've spread the load over the washer, right? You don't want to put the big washer on top. You want to put it on the bottom so it spreads the load over the floor pan. Yeah. Otherwise, it'll just, if you just put a lock washer and a nut, it'll just pull through the floor. So pretty self-explanatory, but I have seen it done wrong before. So yeah. Okay, so sorry to jump around a bit here, guys. So the little 62 Valiant, it's gone now. It's actually, I took that video a couple months ago, but unfortunately, I guess the last clip I did of the Valiant, it just sort of disappeared. This camera, I don't know, sometimes I just want to throw it out, but it basically, the lady, I drove the car back to the lady's house, and she drove it around a bit, but she ended up buying, like, while the car was sitting there, she ended up buying like a Chrysler 300 that's a couple years old, and I guess she just loves driving that, so she's probably just going to sell the 62 Valiant, but it did run and drive fine. I drove it back there. It's sort of it's not, I think it would be a great car for someone who wants to tinker on it. I don't think they wanted to do that. I think they wanted a car to just fire up and drive around. And unfortunately, like I said, it sat 30 years. I went through it, and I'd be happy to tinker on it and drive it around, but I don't think that's maybe the kind of people they are. They just wanted something they could turnkey and drive. So I sort of said, well, you might want to look for something that's probably, a little better condition or whatever. So anyways, I apologize for jumping around here, but I figured I've got this huge early Hemi collection that I sort of acquired. Well, not huge. I've got 4 of them and a bunch of parts, but they're really neat engines. You don't see them very often. You always just see them in an old hot rod. You don't see them sitting, original state where they haven't been pulled apart yet. So I thought I would just share these with you guys. I didn't really have anywhere else to put all this stuff. I didn't want to just make a video just for these. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy and get to see some neat stuff. Now, the biggest misconception with these early Hemis is that they are all the same, and that is not true. There's Chrysler, there's Dodge, there's DeSoto, and there's Imperial, but that falls under the Chrysler category. Now, the Chryslers, there's 331s, 354s, and 392s. I don't remember all the other sizes. Dodge has, the smallest is a 241, then there's, I think, a 276. There's for sure a 315 and a 325. And then DeSoto had, I think, a 270, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. You guys will chime in, but I did have a 330 DeSoto, which a lot of guys would always say to me, don't you mean a 331? No, that's Chrysler. So DeSoto had a 330, they had a 341, and I've got a video on the channel. You guys can check it out. It's that 57 DeSoto Adventurer. It's gold and black. That's my friend Joe's car, and that has a 345. So again, I've had people say, don't you mean 354? No, that's Chrysler. The DeSoto had a 345, and that was in the Adventurer. Dual 4 barrels, really neat engines. So there's tons of differences, and the big thing that people don't realize is none of the parts interchange on any of those 3 brands except for the spark plug tubes, which are these right here. Aside from that, like even between 354 and 392, which is in the Chrysler platform, I've got 392 heads, which will bolt onto a 354, but then you got to treat it like a B engine versus an RB, like a 383 and a 440. You cannot use the stock intake from a 354 if you have 392 heads on it, because the heads, everything sits higher and that doesn't line up. So without getting into too much detail with all the differences, yeah, it gets a little complicated. And then as I'm finding out, I mean, I don't have much early Hemi knowledge, but as I'm finding out, the there's four, there's car engines, truck engines, industrial engines, and marine engines. Now this one here is a 331 industrial, but yeah, so I'll just give a quick run through of what I have here, and I just figured you guys might enjoy seeing them. And I do apologize if you guys are annoyed with the jumping around. I've got a bunch of it now. Not sure how this happened. I'm like acquiring all this stuff. I don't even have a project to put the stuff in. So I'll give you try and give you the quick story on it. I had bought a 354 car engine, a 1956 354, from my buddy Joe, and he had a whole bunch of early Hemi stuff. And so this is it here. Now, my original plan was to put this engine in my 58 Plymouth two-door wagon, but I've changed directions on that, and I'm doing another video on it. That's a 383 that I've been putting together, and I'm sort of going for that golden commando look they had in 58. They had a 350, but I think I'm just going to go with that engine in the wagon. I had that 383 sitting in the corner for years, and I thought I should just use it for something. But back to the Hemi stuff. Basically, this engine is a car engine, and it has the water crossovers in the front of the head. And now both heads are cracked, so I've just been searching for car heads forever. And this is it's the higher compression. I think they're 10-to-1 pistons. It's supposed to have a dual 4 intake, but I just have a single for it. But I put in new cam bearings, new rod, new main bearings, new rings. It's still standard bore, and it's in really, really nice shape. It's a very low mileage 354. Now it did have a crack on the block over here, which we cast weld. And that's very common with these. So there's tons of room to punch them out, but where they lack is the exterior walls are super thin, super thin. So if you stick your finger in here, you can tell there's like barely any material there. So they're just very prone to cracking. So this is a 354. Then in looking for heads, I'll show you in a sec there, I've got piles of heads on the bench over there. Of course, not a single one is the one I wanted. But, you come across stuff kind of cheap, and you just figure, oh, I'll grab it, and I'll, who knows. So then a friend of mine said, hey, this guy down near Duncan has a whole bunch of early Hemi stuff. He's a big Ford guy, but his dad had some Hemi stuff, and his dad passed away, and so the guy's going to sell it. So I picked up all this other stuff for pretty cheap, but again, none of it was actually the heads I wanted. So I've got a truck intake, it's a 2-barrel. There's another truck intake, the 2-barrel. This is a marine application timing cover. Extra oil pans. Now this engine was there. This is another 354, but this one is I believe it's an industrial or a truck engine. It came with heads, and it came with pistons. It's punch 30 over, and I've got the pistons and rods, but that's it. There's no crank, there's no cam, and it's got an oil pan on it, but I think it's marine. So that's that one. Then behind us here is a very complete 331. So this is a 51 to 55 Chrysler 331, but you guys see it's got this long extended bell housing. So this would have been, this is kind of the plague of these engines, is this bell housing. You can get an adapter plate to run another transmission, but they're like $1,400 US, and it's just nuts. So, but I mean, so complete down to it's still got the plug wires in it with the, they've got these long sort of sleeves on them. I pulled the plugs out, and everything's pretty good. So this is it's an industrial 331. It probably was used running a piece of machinery or a water pump or something. Apparently farmers use them all the time. But this one has car valve covers. They say firepower. They don't say industrial. And then it doesn't have adjustable rocker arms. This one's got hydraulic lifters and regular rocker arms, but it's very clean in there. So I got this one. And again, it wasn't too expensive. I just figured I'll grab it. So then, in that hunt, I also had, there was actually another 331 long bell, just the block, and I actually sold that to a young guy. He was looking for a 331, and he said, oh, I'll figure out the long block and whatever. He just wanted the block. So that's good. He was happy. I'm happy. He offered me a fair price for it, so that's gone. But then if we take a walk over here, oh, here's where the heads begin. So that pair of heads came off that 354. That is the 30 over block, the second engine I showed you. Now they are, I believe, truck heads or industrial heads, but they don't have the water crossover. So these heads have the water crossover. See, they got these holes on the front. These are what I was looking for, except these are 392 heads. I made the mistake of purchasing these. Somebody told me, no, they're 354, and then they're not. My bad for not running the part numbers. So these heads are 354 heads. These are what are from that first engine I bought. These are the heads that were on it, but they're both cracked. And they're cracked underneath where the valve springs set, unfortunately. So I'm not quite sure what to do with them. I don't want to throw them out. They're extremely hard to find with these water crossovers. And then I did buy these. These are, again, 354 industrial heads. And they were really cheap. I just grabbed them. And I've got one more single 354 head. This one does have the water crossover. This is the head I need. But the guy just had the one. And I think I paid like $400 just for that head. And it's got hardened seats. So I'd have to find another single head and put hardened seats in it. So that's where I'm at with heads. Okay, and so yesterday I actually picked up this. This is a 354 Marine engine. So it's a 57 or 58 Chrysler 354 Hemi. And it was probably used in a boat. So this one's actually got a dual 4 intake. And it's got the rare dimpled valve covers. See, you've got these dimples. It says Chrysler Marine, and this one has adjustable rocker arms. So this was worth grabbing. So the Marine engines you can actually use in a car. It's a short bell housing. This one still has all the stuff bolted to it, the Marine transmission and everything. But see, this one actually runs off the front of the engine. So the cam probably spins the opposite way, right? These ones, the crank had a gear drive instead of a timing chain on the end, and then that gear drive spins the cam the other way. This, when you hear about them opposite, reverse rotation, that's what they do. So it spins it the wrong way, so you can't really just run it in a vehicle, but it is a usable block. Now, I believe the heads have special cooling, and the intake has special cooling for Marine, but it's still really neat stuff to hang on to. I'm not going to throw anything out. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you guys some neat early Hemi stuff. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Sorry the video's a little jumps around, but at least I have a spot to sort of throw this stuff in. As for what I'm going to do with all these engines, I have no idea. The price was super cheap. And I thought, rather than see this stuff get scrapped and sort of history's gone forever, I'll just grab this stuff and shove it in the corner. It sort of goes hand in hand. You pick up an old Hemi and you want people to see it. So sticking it in that wagon, maybe not what I should do. I probably just run that 383 in there and, keep this stuff for possibly... maybe I'll pick up an old Chrysler from the 30s or something and put this in there. That'd be a cool build. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate everybody who's subscribed and kept up, and we will see you on the next one.